So hi everyone, as promised I said that I would look at doing some more question and answer videos, and I was actually sent a really good question, so I thought I'd try and cover it today. And the question was, since you work in healthcare, do you identify as a patient or a caregiver? And does this change based on how well you are doing mentally or physically? And that's a really good one to ask, because I think people working in healthcare find it really hard to identify as the patient themselves. I think there is still a lot of stigma and a lot of self-stigma around this. Two people who have written important books on it are Claire Gerarda, if I've pronounced that right, Beneath the White Coat, and a psychologist, Caroline Elton, I think I've got that right, and they really do hit the nail on the head with almost the fear of our own vulnerability. It's like holding a mirror up to what we treat day in, day out. So we do all that we can to avoid having to admit it, to avoid having to look it face on. And the truth is, of course, we all get ill. Of course, all healthcare professionals get every illness that the rest of you get. We're not superhuman, we're not Superman. And that goes for anything. That goes for cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, brain tumour, mental illness, alcohol and drug addiction. In fact, in terms of mental health problems and alcohol and drug addiction, you'd find the proportions are higher, certainly in the doctor population, as a way of coping often with the things they're seeing, with the things they're doing, and with the pressures that they're under. I don't know if any of you had chance to watch the recent Adam Kay series. For many doctors it was too traumatic to watch, but it sums up how many have been treated through the system and how many come to an end, sadly. And I think that's partly why we have so much sickness in healthcare. We don't look after each other. I don't think yoga's the answer. I don't think resilience or well-being courses are the answer. I think compassion and common human decency and kindness and will go a long way. But I think we're also terribly stretched, and until that can be fixed, and until people aren't being begged and forced to cover one more shift or to do one more thing when they're already burnt out and not seeing their families, that's not going to change. And of course there's the political situations as well. If any of you did watch the Adam Kay series, you'll have seen that he had a complaint made against him, and he discovered it was from somebody in his department, and that can be extremely distressing. Certainly GMC complaints have led to suicide, the way the letters are written, the way things are worded for doctors. Medicine has been there since they were 18, and it has also almost become an identity. And to have that threatened, and to realise that you have nothing in the background, no backup. There are some others practicing without family, without kids, without other forms of income or income protection, for example. And that is terrifying. So when I'm working, I identify as both actually, and increasingly I'm coming out more and more with all my disabilities. It used to be when I first started that I'd just come out and mention the ankylosing spondylitis. It was the easiest. Other people have physical health conditions, and I didn't need to, worry too much about judgment. It wasn't necessarily a visible illness. It was if I developed a limp or couldn't walk for some particular time, and then I'd get comments like, "Oh, have you injured your knee in a skiing accident or something?" So you would get assumptions because of age, but that didn't bother me so much. Then I guess later on, and probably when I was further down my career, it came as a sort of shock to me. I think as much as it did to anyone else. I'd had a relapse in medical school, but I was not expecting to have a relapse of anorexia nervosa into my psychiatry training several years later. And that really hit me for six, really. And I think I need to write some kind of essay or journal entry on this, actually. I'm still going through it. I'm still going through the patient process, being the patient, life on the other side, but life on the other side is such an eye-opener, and you realise what you had, and you realise what you haven't got. And I'm saying that as an informal patient. So as we start to think about other restrictions, for example, being under section, being in seclusion, this has changed my whole view of those things, and how we treat patients and their basic right to dignity, and how we can do better for them. So I won't go into a huge amount of detail now, but I certainly want to write something for one of the journals, and I hope it will be accepted. I've learned a lot both from general hospitals and specialist eating disorder units, of course, not forgetting the community team treatment that I've had and the general practice treatment that I've had. So yeah. And I guess my identity is carer or healthcare giver, I suppose naturally it does change to some extent, depending on how well you're doing mentally or physically, but that's where insight comes in. And in the GMC, we have to recognise when we are becoming so unwell, or our health is becoming such a hindrance to either ourselves or others, then we need to stop working and we need to speak to somebody senior, one of our supervisors and occupational health, and do the right thing. And I am proud that that is something I've always done very, very early on. I've never let it wait. That's the worst thing you can do. Never leave it, because you're just going to wait for a mistake to happen, which will impact another patient, and then cause you and them even further stress. So yeah, if I start to recognise that my mental health and physical health, if I can't walk or if I can't drive my car to work, is impacting how I'm treating other patients and how I'm behaving as a doctor, then of course I'm straight on the phone to my supervisors, and we're either putting adjustments in place or we're organising time off as appropriate. Never leave it so long that somebody gets harmed, whether that be you, the doctor, or the patient. So I hope that helps a bit. Some resources I mentioned there worth taking a look at. Claire Gerardo, Beneath the White Coat, Caroline Elton, and also the Adam K book is fantastic, hilarious, whereas the television series recently made is much more serious and quite traumatising for those of us that are working in healthcare, but I think actually an essential eye-opener for the public. So do take a look at those and speak soon.